Hi everybody. I will speak in English, and so I go very fast because we are late in our schedule. So thank you all for being here. Thank you, Monica Virasau. Thank you, Joan Balcel. Thank you, Mireia, for this invitation. I want to give you, we discussed this my intervention before I came here, and the best approach we decided to give is to give a general overview and leave time for room for question later on. So what is the sharing economy, or other words used for the sharing economy, and why to regulate it? So first of all, definition, because law has the duty to define things. So, and here we find many words used for this kind. We find sharing economy, we find collaborative economy, which is the expression adopted by the European community, but then in the footnote of the communication they write, for us, sharing economy or collaborative economy is the same. Peer-to-peer economy, if you want to emphasize the non-professional dimension of service providers. Gig economy for labor law. On-demand economy, collaborative consumption, crowd-based capitalism, platform economy, and so on. So starting from the sharing economy, or collaborative, but sharing economy is the first expression that has been used to define this new economic model. What do we share in the sharing economy? Here on the right, you find two famous, super famous covers by The Economist. The first one is 2013, the second one is 2015. The first one was the rise of the sharing economy, and you can find how you can share your idling resources. They are underutilized goods that we all own as owner: car, spare rooms, bikes, and all sorts of things we can think of, and we can share these assets that are usually utilized for just few hours a day or few minutes in a lifetime. It's like the drill. The typical example of the sharing economy is, do we need a drill or we need a hole in the wall? Which means, do we need the thing or we need the function these things perform? And so a new economy arises starting from this premise. The second one, which is even more important, is another cover of 2015, The Economist, and the title was Workers on Tap. You open and workers flow. Which means a new economy start of on-demand workers. All sorts of service can be given no longer by employee of a firm, but by people who you recruit on demand for single tasks. In this case, what we share, why we call it sharing economy, in the first case is pretty easy to understand. We share the room, we share the car, we share whatever. In the second case, what we share is kind of puzzling for a lawyer, because we share time, skills, and all sorts of things we usually define in other ways, which are under the realm of labor law. And, sorry for that, this is my attempt to prevent intrusion, but it doesn't work, it just bothers my presentation. And this is the definition given by the European community in its communication on the collaborative economy, where you can find pretty easily that the definition uses the same framework. Collaborative or sharing economy refers to a business model where activities are facilitated by a platform that creates an open marketplace. I will say something about this open marketplace for the temporary usage of goods or service, temporary usage of service. So sharing goods, sharing time and assets, often provided by private individuals. This is the definition. I think there is a lot to say about this definition. It will be part of our debate. I don't frame it like this. So this is the model. the idea that a new economy, a new sharing economy, is based on the provision of service by non-professionals who share their assets or share their time, they work. And this model is said to be applicable to all sorts of economic sectors. The Uber of X is the expression that is usually used to define this possibility to apply the model. We can share goods, Airbnb, the spare room. We can share our time. TaskRabbit is the typical website, for the typical platform for gig economy, for doing small tasks. So assets and time, or the two. I mean, in Uber, you share your car, you share your time. So most of the time, the two things are combined. Whereas another model which goes under the expression of the sharing economy, bike sharing, car sharing, this is something completely different. Because in this case, we just have a traditional firm that owns the assets and rent out the assets for on a daily basis, on hourly basis, and so on. So this is a completely different model, even from an economic point of view, from a legal point of view. So what we focus on is the first three examples I gave, which means non-professional providers of goods intermediated by a platform. This is the economic model we are discussing when we discuss about the sharing economy, the collaborative economy, or all the other expressions we have seen at the beginning. The thing is, what kind of regulation we need for this new economic environment? Because this new economic environment is changing market structure, is changing economic organizations, is changing the way competition is framed. So it is changing consumer protection, labor law, there are many, tax law, there are many aspects involved. But just go back and see what are the big challenges for the sharing economy from a legal point of view. Two main premises to say that we are in front of a completely new model. The first one is related to peers. Peers means pares in Latin, which means people contracting on equal standing, something different from the B2C, business to consumer model, where you have someone who is strong, wealthy, possess all the information, and on the other side you have someone who is on average poorer, less wealthy, less information. Here we have peers, we have non-professional. Professor Pere-Fabra was telling us before that is the possibility of a new model where you can transform yourself in an entrepreneur very easily. What does this mean from a legal point of view? This means that since these peers are not full-time, large-scale professional standard developed by law should not be applied, which means legislation for taxi drivers, legislation for hoteliers, legislation for restaurants. The main challenge for an economy where you have a massive provision of service by non-professional is changing the 20th century model where service were typically provided by professionals. And all legislation was developed based on this assumption. So what do we do with all the sector-specific legislation? What do we do with all the B2C legislation, consumer law? Because the main narrative on the sharing economy is no professional law applicable to this model. This is the first premise. The second one relates to platform. Remember the definition we saw at the beginning that was this platform, collaborative platform, provides an open marketplace. So what happened is these platforms do no longer provide their service directly to the customer. They intermediate the provision of services by third parties to the consumer. So they create a marketplace. This is what they say. I'm not the provider, I am the marketplace. Airbnb, Uber, what do they say? Uber has been challenged by the European Court of Justice exactly on this ground. What this model say, what this platform says, look, I'm not the provider. Legislation for providers does not apply to me. For me, it's a different legislation which is based on the idea that I am a marketplace. So, for example, you have a litigation in US about the ADA, the American with Disabilities Act, where these people, where Uber said, look, it was about having ramp in the taxi to accommodate people with disabilities, and Uber said, okay, I agree, I am of course in favor of ADA, but I'm not the person. It's for the service provider to accommodate the need to have ramp and to accommodate the people with disabilities. So they, by saying they are not service provider, they skip their responsibilities as service providers. So the second part of this assumption is platforms are not service providers, but digital marketplace, so rules for providers do not apply. These are the two premises, the rest follow. This kind of new model, so the main narrative I was referring to before is based on this idea. We have this revolution in the economic model, again, in market structure, in business organization, in consumer protection, on worker relationship. These need a level playing field. This is the typical expression that is used. A level playing field where disparities of power are completely changed and we have to rethink completely our model of protection of the weaker party. How this level playing field should look like according to this narrative? The conclusions that are usually found in policy papers, in many research is we have a crowd of micro-entrepreneurs who are now empowered in the sharing economy. Why they are empowered? Because for disintermediation, we have disintermediation, which means that before, in order to find someone who wants my spare room in Barcelona for 2 days, I could put something in the university. It was a very small scale economy. Now I can put it on the platform and directly find someone who is in search for a room for 2 days in Barcelona. So this intermediation means we cut the middleman and we are now able to access market very easily, to offer our goods and service very easily to the public. So reduce barrier to entry, and this is true for everybody. Think not just people for the sharing economy. Think, for example, about a small or medium enterprise that doesn't need to buy servers. They can just access service provided by Amazon, Amazon Web Service. You just upgrade your subscription and obtain more and more possibility to store your data. So reduced barrier to entry, lower cost, and countless business opportunity. So the first conclusion about this model is, look, you have a lot of empowered people who now can offer their service, their goods, very, very easily, thanks to this platform. And what about the consumer? Even the consumer is empowered in this narrative. Why? Again, because they have wider choice, and we can find almost everything online. Have you seen the advertising of Amazon that says, look, you can find, I don't know, scissors for people who use the left hand. You can find all sorts of strange things. It's what has been defined the long tail of the market. Before, it was very difficult to find something very specific, very special, very customized. Now you can find it very easily, and you doesn't pay that much as you could pay 10 or 20 years ago for this. So no geographical limits, no geographical barrier, very lower prices, and empowered consumer. But what is even more important, we now enjoy a lot of information. Information that both comes from professional source, as had always been the case, but in this case we have also non-professional source, because we have the rating system, all this system, the reviews, written by the consumers themselves. So if we apply the typical description by Hirschman, who describes voice and exit, which means if I'm dissatisfied with an organization, I can either voice, protest, and I can write a review now, or exit, just go away. Competition is one click away, is what has been said about this platform. So I can either protest or go away. And third, compared to a model where we have a business on one side and the poor consumer on the other, in this new model we have an intermediary, which is the platform, that mediates the transaction. So more on an equal standing. What is the conclusion, the real conclusion of this general picture I gave you is a more general one, which is we are in front of a new era for regulation and for self-regulation. Why? This conclusion is based on two basic assumptions. The first one is platforms are perfectly able to regulate their marketplace. So they provide a marketplace, and since they know almost everything of the economic agent who operate on this platform, they are perfectly able to push aside people who don't behave well, to punish, to give the right incentive, to do the right checks, to do the right controls. So the idea is, as platform, we can do almost everything, which means we don't need the legislator from the outside to give its own regulation without knowing almost anything about how our market works. We do a better job than him, than the regulator. So this is an argument, this is a very powerful argument that add to the conventional arguments usually used to push the agenda in favor of self-regulation, which is regulatory capture, which has been used here, of course. Right? So many of these platforms say legislators has been captured by taxi drivers, by hoteliers, and so on, asymmetric information, the typical arguments that are usually used to say that we don't need an external legislation, here is further reinforced by the idea that reputation-based system and other tools help those who have a platform to run the platform very easily. They have all the information, much more the information possessed by the legislator. But this is not just that they can do that, they have a compelling interest to do that. So platforms can regulate themselves and have a compelling interest to regulate, because they are not provider. They offer a marketplace, and those who offer a marketplace, what do they want? It's clear, they want a healthy marketplace. I want my marketplace to run well. So I have no interest to have the market not working properly, which means platform can and have an interest to regulate themselves. And if we want to add something, when you have peer-to-peer economy, there is no weaker party. So there's no need of a big part of that legislation that has been deployed in these decades to regulate a B2C model. This is the main conclusion. And I'm here to challenge, in a way, my last paper has focused exactly on the protection of the weaker party in the platform economy, because my idea was to challenge this very widespread understanding, which, of course, shed a light on the model, but overlooks some other aspect. So, a level playing field has to take into account other aspects of the transaction and of this economic model. Why? First, I start my survey by analyzing standard form contract. What I found was, first of all, this is a big shift in contract law. There is just one contract drafted by the platform and applied to the users. Whether they are a small or a medium enterprise which provides goods and service, or a consumer, the same model, the same contract applied to the two. And is written by the platform and adhered by the users on a take it or leave it basis. The I agree icon, all of us know. What kind of clauses I found going through this contract? Airbnb, Uber, Etsy, everything. I put the footnotes in this paper describing it in details. Unilateral changes, so platform can change, and they do that almost on a daily basis sometimes, without prior notification and with a presumption of acceptance if you go on using the platform. They have the right to terminate, suspend an account, the least product, which can be, you can find many cases where this is an unfair practice. For copyright infringement, they, for example, delist products, even if this case was not justified and people didn't receive any compensation for that. Or terminating an account can be firing a person. For example, on Uber, having your listing on the third page, on on the last page, or on the first page make a lot of difference. So they reserve to themselves choice of law, choice of jurisdiction, often in a different country from the consumer. There is always a waiver for class action and jury trial. There are a lot of bundling clauses, so which means you don't only buy this service, you have to buy my delivery service, you have to buy my payment system, and so on, bundling the service together. But the most important clause perhaps is the one I mentioned before, which is the idea that they find themselves not as provider, but instead as network or marketplace, which means we have no responsibility for the provision of service, we just have the responsibility for the matchmaking service. So a different picture emerges if we look at this standard form contract compared to the narrative I described before. And even the idea of a crowd of micro-entrepreneurs who are so powerful and empowered by this new economic model can be challenged for many reasons. First of all, because in some cases these people are employees, and those who study labor law know this very well, the idea that there is a risk, a high risk of misclassification of these people, which means shifting the risk from the entrepreneur to the employee, and creating not just an unjust system, but an efficient system, because in this case you create externalities. You shift the risk, which is wrong even from the conventional understanding of the economic model. So sometimes these people are not independent contractors, they're not service providers, independent service providers, but are employees of a firm which use a new economic model, a new way of managing their workforce. Second, even if these people are truly service providers, still there are many problems. So what I tried to do in this article I was mentioning before was to say, look, it's not just for the worker to be the weaker party of the transaction, it's a complete ecosystem where you can have a small and medium enterprise, professional providers who still are in position of weakness vis-a-vis the platform, especially for a lack of transparency. The ranking criteria. So if I put if I sell my stuff, if I offer my service on a platform, I don't know what the ranking criteria are. Something like popularity, service providers don't know. There are surveys on this, and they say, I don't know what this criteria is. The reputation system can be changed. Even the price, sometimes these people don't know the price in advance. If you ask a Uber driver, she doesn't know, he doesn't know what is the price he's going to receive, how much you're paying. So it's a non-transparent system for service provider for something that is very salient as an aspect of the transaction. In many cases, there are mechanisms that avoid that competition is one click away. Why? Because you find a way to lock in people by increasing switching costs. For example, if I don't allow you to take your reputation and bring to another platform, this is a strong lock-in mechanism. Or if I give you a loan to buy the car and you are an Uber driver, this is another lock-in system. This is especially true in case of vertical integration. Think about people who sell, I don't know, laptops on Amazon, and Amazon itself is a marketplace, but on the other side is also a service provider because they sell laptop in the very same platform. And the way this competition works is not entirely clear, and this is even true when someone can pay a higher fee, a commission to the platform to have their selling at the top of the list. And this is even bad for consumers who have their attention captured by something which is not the best for them, but is for those who pay more. And even for the consumer, there are some things that can be said, and because it's true, it is empowering the way we saw before, but there are some things that we can say. The first thing is when we have peer providers, no professional providers, new market failures can arise. I mean, if I go to sleep on Airbnb, I'm not sure that the fire system is checked as it is in a hotel. And this is something you don't correct through reviews and opinions because it's only the first one who ran into the fire that can say us something about this. It's what the economists define non-observable feature that cannot be rated by. Second, it's true that the consumers have more information, but in the era of big data, new information asymmetries can arise. I mean, platform knows much, much more than consumers. They can use this information to profile consumers, and this opens a question not just of conventional asymmetric information, which we have, but also of exploiting vulnerabilities. Think about children, think about elderly people, all people with disabilities. In all these cases, if the platform knows exactly the feature of this person, it's very easy to exploit their vulnerabilities. So we have to pay a lot of attention to that. Even price. I mean, we come from a world where the typical model was the static prices, which means all the people pay the same for a subscription. And I'm not, because the firm was not able to apply a different price for each one based on each willingness to pay. Now this possibility, I mean, if we check the flight to Rome, from Barcelona to Rome today, we find all sorts of different prices. So this system of dynamic prices is confusing consumers and is shifting what has been defined the consumer surplus from the consumer. Consumer surplus means you get the difference from what you were willing to pay and what you actually pay. Now, when the firm is able to charge you exactly the price you're willing to pay, this consumer surplus is reduced. And another important, very important aspect is that consumers usually don't know who is responsible, who is providing the service, whether Airbnb, whether the single person. For example, on Airbnb, you have many people, you find a nice couple in the picture, and they are real estate agents. It's the platform itself that doesn't want these people to disclose their professional nature. And professional nature means applying B2C legislation. So I'm going to conclude, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. How a new regulatory framework should look like. I skipped some more specific aspects because I would run out of time. So I won't go into details, but if you want, we can go into that later. But it's important to remember first that disparity of bargaining power exists in the platform economy. It's different from the conventional B2C model, but still we have disparities of bargaining power that doesn't involve just the workforce, the employee, but is a more complex scenario. The second one is what I stressed before, which is platform can mitigate many, but not all market failures. So in some cases, platforms have an interest to mitigate market failures, but in some cases they can't. I mean, I have an interest to push aside from the marketplace a bad service provider, someone who provides a poor service. This is true. But on the other side, I have no interest to eliminate the noise created by the apartment rented out on a daily basis for the people who live in the surrounding, in the neighborhood, or to take into account the fact that a big part of Barcelona or some part of Barcelona is changing due to these short-term rentals. It's impressive. I've seen changes in months from the last time I came, and I can see how this process is going on and on. And third, and this is in a special response to a document issued by the European Community a few months, 2 months ago, 1 month ago, relying too much on the capacity of platform to adjudicate the case between the provider and the two-sided of the platform. This is what economists define as a two-sided market. So a market where you intermediate the two sides of this market, providers and customers. This is not always true because the typical way competition works in the sharing economy is, in two-sided markets, is different from the conventional model. If I am a firm and offer services or provide goods, in this case, my only way to create competition is try to sell as much as I can. If I have to create a marketplace, I have to find the chicken and the egg. So I have a chicken and egg problem. Find providers, but in order to be attractive for providers, I need customer. In order to be attractive for customer, I need providers. How to do that? Usually, you have one side of the platform, which is more powerful. Is what has been defined the kings of the platform. Who is the strongest party? Usually, those, for example, think about, I don't know, Booking.com. Who's powerful on Booking.com? Is hotels or is customer? In this case, the platform decide which is the more difficult side and try to have a different approach to them, whereas the other side can be treated in a different way. Each platform has an equilibrium on that, so deciding that the platform is better able to adjudicate the case is not always true. Two things to conclude. First one, there is an enormous impact on cities for this new economic model, which is kind of new. And the legislative regulation, the regulatory responsibilities are not perfectly aligned to the challenges of this new economic model. So we see cities trying to regulate this model, even if competition, the competition to regulate this model is for the state, is for the regions, is for Europe. So there is a reflection, a need for reflection for who is responsible for what in a model where cities are strongly impacted by this model, but have no power, have few powers to regulate the model, to give their vision of this model. And you see that all sorts of different approach to this model. On the top right, you see the bot created by Airbnb when regulation in London was approved that was in favor of short-term rentals. On the other side, you can easily recognize some reaction in Barcelona on Airbnb saying, who's paying your holiday? Why do you think you're sparing money? You spare money and some other people are paying for you. So reactions are very different, and there is a need to have a general regulation for the sharing economy at the European level. At the same time, we have a need to give cities the possibility to accommodate their needs as it always will be. And I mean, the typical example I give is until the recent past, we could decide how many hotels there are in a given area of the city. In the Barceloneta, there is just one or two, and now it's like an hotel. And this has not been decided by the city. So the first decision is a decision taken by the city. The second one, no. The second one is a decision taken by a large amount of people. Each with his own decision on aggregate create a change which is new. And we can discuss about this, what is defined in environmental law as the tyranny of small decisions. So the sum of many small decisions that on aggregate create an enormous impact. I want to conclude with this. This is the session that concludes the day. I strongly wanted, because I think this is very important. I put the sharing economy for the 99%, and we will discuss we try to compare in the debate that has been labeled as the platform cooperativism, which is an expression adopted by Trevor Schultz in New York, which is describe these all sort of attempts to challenge the market model that I've been describing in these minutes, in order to change it and put it for the good. And in this panel we have this afternoon, we try to compare the two strongest models, I would say in the world, for sure in Europe, of cooperativism, which is the Catalan one and the Italian one, especially the Emilia-Romagna one. And so this is an attempt to create a confrontation with these two strong traditions and to try to give an understanding which doesn't pay a tribute to the American model but start to develop a truly European model. What is the problem in creating? So I invite all of you this afternoon at 5 p.m. We will have, after the panel, we will also have a lighting talk, so we have 1 hour and a half to discuss together with people, with panelists, and with all of you, all the things that have been discussed during the panel and during the day. What is the problem connected? What are the issues that this platform, this cooperative, these social enterprises face when they try to create this model? First of all, they try to create, what does it mean to have a platform cooperativism? To have a democratic governance, to have a distributed ownership, to have a value orientation. And the first account was, look, it's easy. It's an app. We just clone the app. But that is not entirely true, but because it's not just a matter of creating an app, it's also a matter of offering a reliable service, which is not, I ask to my employee, which is the conventional model, firm with employees, the customer comes, I ask the employee to provide the service. Here, I rely on people who can say no. It's not my employees, so I have to offer a reliable service. How do I do that? Through an algorithm, and an algorithm that in some cases externalize the risk. So if I want to create a truly model which is cooperative, I have to find a way not to externalize the risk, but this drives a problem of competition. Then we have other problems, because with big data, with network, with indirect network effect, you have a strong tendency to a monopoly, a winner-take-all model. So if platforms try to enter these markets, it's kind of difficult because you find these big giants, these tech giants that already dominate the model. And the funding model is very important because, of course, you cannot go to venture capitalists. If you go to venture capitalists, then you cannot orientate the model the way you want. You have to orientate the model to refund these people. Of course, they gave you people money for have the money back. And scaling is also important for the very same reason. So funding the initial money and find a way to scale are big challenges for it. What you can find is usually that there is strong value system. They find a way, they know very exactly what they want. They don't know exactly how to be sustainable, how to make money. And there is a lot of attention for the commons-based peer production. There is a lot of attention to blockchain, which is a distributed technology. But the thing is, which is very important to stress, technology is not by itself what defines the solution, the way an economic model goes. Internet was a distributed model, but at a certain moment, some center of attention has been created where tech giants made money. So the idea that a distributed technology means distributed wealth, it's kind of naive. So it must be looked, but it's not the solution for that. So thank you.